Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg,
I'm Emily.
and we are continuing our Dangerous Visions read through with the next story that we come to. I think this was the third one in the book, and it's the 122nd in my bibliography of Frederik Pohl, and
Mm.
it's the original title was The Day After the Day the Martians Came. In subsequent collections, he shortened it to just The Day the Martians Came.
Mm-hmm.
So you may see it under that title. And of course, it was published in Dangerous Visions. This is the current reprinting of Dangerous Visions that is available from who did this one? Ah, publisher.
Published yours.
Blackstone Publishing
It's a beautiful
reprinted
cover too.
this
Cover.
and reprinted again Dangerous Visions, and they are coming out with the last Dangerous Visions this October, thanks to J. Michael Straczynski, I think you
Mm-hmm.
pronounce his name, the guy who is famous for Babylon 5 and was friend and now executor of Harlan Ellison's estate. And Frederik Pohl, first of all, is one of the first fandom. He was a friend of Isaac Asimov. He grew up in Brooklyn with Asimov and Kornbluth and a lot of the other early science fiction fans in the 1930s. And Pohl, um, around the time that Asimov started writing, he became an editor and a literary agent. And he was a literary agent of a lot of these early science fiction authors.
Interesting.
And being an editor of magazines like Astonishing Science Stories, he published a lot of the stories that authors like Asimov got rejected from John Campbell. They went to
Mm-hmm.
Pohl, and Pohl published them in his magazine.
Nice.
So there's a
Nice.
lot of stuff he took and published for these authors. And he did write stories of his own in the 1940s, but they were of the very much of the pulp adventure variety,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
kind of Planet Stories type
Yeah.
of simple science fiction adventures. They were okay, but they weren't anything great. He didn't really hit his stride as a writer until the 1950s. When he was still a very influential editor, he started a series of original anthologies, which I think was the first science fiction original anthology called Star Science
Oh,
Fiction.
okay. I'm
And
familiar with that.
he published a
I'm trying to
lot
figure
of the
it out.
greatest science fiction stories of the 1950s in his series of the Star Science Fiction stories.
Okay.
Um,
I know that. Maybe you mentioned it to me. I
Probably
know. I
we
know
might
that
even
title.
we might even have read one of the stories from
Okay.
one of those. I
Okay.
can't remember for sure, but
Yeah, I can't
um,
remember for sure either. It must have been from you. I don't have a ton of people in my life who are super into science fiction.
especially not the old
Yeah.
stuff.
Like my parents like science fiction, but they don't read science fiction. They watch it on TV or
Mhm.
in shows and stuff or in
Yeah,
movies.
most
That's
people
that kind
know
of their
Star
thing.
Trek and Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah.
So um, Pohl was editor of those. In the 1960s, he became editor succeeding Horace L. Gold
Mm-hmm.
of Galaxy magazine
Mm-hmm.
and If magazine,
Mm.
and he started Worlds of Tomorrow with the publishing company that was responsible for Galaxy and If. So he was
Cool.
editing three different science fiction magazines from like 1961 or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
all the way into the early 1970s.
Interesting.
So very, very influential editor. Later on, he would win, actually earlier with Kornbluth, I believe the Space Merchants won a Hugo. Maybe not. Um, but later on, he won Hugo Award for Gateway,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really brilliant science fiction book. If you've never read that or the sequels, it's a whole series of them.
Interesting.
So we're talking about one of the grand old men of science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
He's as influential on the entire science fiction genre as Asimov or Heinlein or Clarke or Bradbury. Even though he's not as well known, he has a lot to do with what science fiction became by the 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So when Dangerous Visions was published in 1967, Pohl was, one of the old guys. And very, very, very influential. And this is another case like Lester Del Rey, where he was one of the editors making the decisions of
Yeah.
what does and doesn't get published.
Excuse me.
Um, so interesting that he wrote a story for this book, or had anything that he would have any trouble getting published,
Hmm.
because he, if anything, he was one of the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
But he did publish this story the day after the day the Martians came in Dangerous Visions. Synopsis.
All right. So the synopsis is a motel owner has been completely taken over by journalists because he is one of the nearest motels to NASA headquarters. And a Mars mission came back with aliens on board. So the aliens are being introduced to the public, and all these journalists are sitting in basically taking over this hotel. He and two of his staff members are just really struggling with all the hubbub. There's a lot of joking around going on. It's just loud. He's not even sure who's actually got a room at his hotel or motel at this point. He's just ready for them to be gone. But the TV's on. There's a lot of information about the Martians, which is just information repeating itself over and over and over again. So the journalists are all just sitting there playing poker and shooting off their mouths, telling jokes. But
Mhm.
instead of using the usual stuff, they're making like Polish jokes, but throwing in the Martians
Yeah.
instead of saying a Polish woman. They say a Martian woman,
Hmm.
gets what really long, hard thing at the end of the day. That kind of stuff. Like, um, and so he's got these two staff members who are black, and they're kind of noticing that the crowd is doing this too, and kind of trying to make themselves scarce, but also stay busy and stay out of the way. But also they're just like eye rolling kind of at everybody, joking off and doing all this kind of stuff. And so finally, the press conference the next day is coming about. So the entire motel basically vacates.
Hmm.
And they're all really like glad. And the motel owner kind of feels badly for how he was treating his staff members. And so he goes to them and buys them a Coke and just kind of sits there and is like, that was absolutely insane. And spoiler alert, at the end of it, he's like, this is just a week from now, 2 weeks from now, they're not even going to remember that they're there.
Hmm.
And so, but then one of the staff members who is a colored person kind of comes out and says, "I noticed they were making a lot of jokes." And he's like, "Yeah, I heard that too. It's kind of obnoxious." He's like, "I don't think these Martians are going to be make any difference to anybody's lives." And
Yeah.
then the colored person looks at him and goes, "It's going to make a difference to mine."
Hmm.
And it's like, whoa, a lot of social commentary there.
Yes.
So yeah, great short story. A lot packed into a very small package, which
Yes,
is what I love
because it
about
is,
the
it's like what, 10 pages,
yeah.
7 pages, something like that.
Yeah. And you said this was published when again? In the six
1967,
Okay.
October of 1967
So
is
this
when
is in the midst
it
of
came
the
out.
civil rights movement.
Yes.
So very
Actually, a
interesting.
lot of things were still to heat up at
Mm-hmm.
67.
Yeah, for sure. So really interesting commentary about how basically the colored folks are like, well, the racism's gonna switch to the aliens now, and
Yep.
we're just gonna be all seen as humans now, finally, because something else is out there.
Hmm.
Um, so I actually really love this story. I think it should be a top tale.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like this whole damn book is gonna be a top tale, to be perfectly
Well, maybe,
honest.
maybe not.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
But
We'll
for the
see as we
most
go
part,
through. But definitely for 1967, this was a dangerous vision,
mm-hmm.
undoubtedly, because
Yes.
it, was totally satirizing the racism that was in America. And what I found great was that the reporters sitting around cracking jokes. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, a lot of those jokes were, like you say, originally Polish jokes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just retelling the same old jokes, but about the Martians.
Yes.
And none of the jokes they were saying was even remotely funny in
No, it
any
wasn't
way,
remotely
shape, or
funny.
form. They were just
And they made
stupid.
no sense because it's such a stereotype specific thing
Hmm.
that there was no time to make a stereotype about the Martians. They had just arrived and
Yeah.
couldn't speak English. And as far as they could tell, were not even humanoid. They were more like animals
But that's
to
the way
them.
it goes.
Hmm.
When a group decides they're going to hate another group, they
Yeah.
do just take the same
Yeah.
attitudes, the
Same
same
shit, different
behaviors,
day.
and repeat it,
Yeah. Same
but
shit,
with
different
a different
situation.
target.
Hmm. Yep.
So Poe was very much packing into this little story the um, machination of that kind of racism and how
Hmm.
it works.
Yes.
That people are faced with something that they're afraid of, and so they do this kind of behavior,
Yes.
which is the exact same behavior they've done to everybody before that.
Yes. And there's nothing new under the sun. So they say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so really interesting work. And I liked that we had a motel owner who seemed not, thankfully, not to be racist, but was just stressed.
Mhm.
And throughout the story, he himself was humanizing everyone, including
Mhm.
his staff, because at the
Mhm.
end of it, he felt badly for
Yeah.
how he had treated his staff because of his stress.
Yeah.
So he was not racially charged.
Hmm.
And he was not even thinking racially, which I think is interesting because it was the colored person who pointed out, this is going to make a difference to me. So this is someone who is completely living in his white man bubble and like thinking of people as people, which I think was really well done for such a short story, too. Like he's humanized everyone except the Martians, and he is just as much a product of that environment. But also just how he is so focused on humanizing everybody,
Hmm.
but also very stressed out and just like, when am I going to feel humanized? Because I'm just being taken advantage of here.
Yeah.
So, really interesting, very raw emotion story.
Yeah.
I like
And
those kind of
it's a
stories.
brilliant story, and totally science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those stories that does a good job of utilizing science fiction to make commentary on our society of the
Mm-hmm.
day of 1967.
Yes.
But it also, I mean, it applies when we get into that situation, there
Mm-hmm.
probably is going to be a racist element against whatever we meet.
Oh, yeah. We definitely, as a culture, I think even as humans, no matter what culture you're in, there's definitely a fear of the unknown
Hmm.
and therefore a very instinctual kill it because it's different mentality.
Yeah.
Not to, I don't love putting us at the level of humans, but we really aren't, or on the level of animals as humans, but we really are no better. We are very fear driven. Anything we don't understand, we want to avoid. Anything that seems dangerous, we create prejudices around, just like other animals do.
Hmm.
So we have to sit there and realize, like, just because we have these instincts to make us have these feelings, we can't be reactionary. That's how we
Yeah.
fight that kill it because it's different mentality. But
Hmm.
so many people are just so reactionary. I think that would be a common issue no matter where you go.
Yeah.
So, can we save it? Not today. Can it be changed? Systematically, probably yes, but it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
And that's kind of the funny point of this is that something happened overnight and nothing's changed overnight.
Right.
It's just more of the same shit, different species
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, this is definitely a top tail.
Yeah, I enjoyed
It
this one a
deserves
lot.
it.
Yeah, there's a
Pretty,
lot.
pretty brilliant story. Even what has it been? 50 years?
Hmm.
More than 50 years. It's been 55,
Sick.
55, 57,
Yeah.
57 years since this came out.
Hmm.
So long time, and it still holds up as a fresh story and well written, good characterization. All the slams against classic science fiction once again do not apply to this one.
Yes.
So, so far, 3 for 3 in Dangerous Visions.
Hmm. So here we are. We'll see if Dangerous Visions does anything else for us.
Yeah,
Also,
well,
I
there
found
will
this
be
really
some.
refreshing to read.
Okay.
in the midst of also reading sixth column. Something really racially charged.
Mhm.
If you haven't seen that video yet, go watch that video. If it's up at the same time this one is, I think we're planning on putting
This
up a
one
Friday.
goes up after.
Okay, so go watch our sixth column video. Very racially charged. We had to put some disclaimers at the beginning and kind of a lot of trigger warnings that it was very, very racist. But having this as like the follow-up to that was so refreshing. I felt like we were really dealing with a lot of race-based stuff in the midst of this reading session, but it was
Mhm.
nice to have a little variety, something that's very racist because of the circumstances and something that's very anti-racist
Yeah.
and just points out, hey, humans doing human things doesn't make us any better than anybody else.
Right.
So, I just thought that was really nice.
Hmm.
It's almost like you planned it, Greg. You're like, I didn't.
It just I
It
didn't,
did
but
just happen.
it just kind of has been coming out that way because the
Yeah.
last group that because we shoot a bunch of videos
Hmm.
in one day,
Yeah.
one sitting, and the last group that we did kind of worked out along similar thematic lines. So,
Hmm.
but I'm not doing that on purpose.
I
It's just
know.
happening.
I think it is kind of just funny that it's happening, but
Yeah.
it's just the ways of the universe,
Hmm.
I guess.
So our next Dangerous Vision story, which it's going to take us a little to get to because it's almost a novel.
Okay.
It's a long one. Now it's shorter than 100 pages, but it's almost 100 pages.
Hmm.
It's Riders of the Purple Wage by Philip Jose Farmer, somebody we
Ooh.
have not talked about on this channel before, but which I've been itching to get to.
I'm excited. I was
And
like finding a new author.
yeah, well, he's not a new author,
Well, new
but
for me author.
new for you.
New to be introduced to author.
Hmm. So I don't know what you'll take of that one.
We'll see.
I'm not going to say anything. Just come on
I'm
back
gonna
and
dive
see
right
the
in and
video.
chew it all up and spit it out and then tell the people. That's
But
my plan.
it Riders of the Purple Wage, unlike the three we've already talked about, which didn't win any awards,
Hmm.
Riders of the Purple Wage was an award winner.
Oh, excellent.
I
All
forget
right.
Hugo or Nebula or both, but it did win award.
Okay.
So
Very cool.
should be
I
a
look
great
forward
story.
to it.
Yes.
Wonderful.
And so, have you ever read The Day After the Day the Martians Came? Or The Day the Martians Came, as it may have been titled in your book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if so, leave your comments in the comments section of the video for everybody to enjoy and possibly learn from. We do want to hear from your thoughts about these stories and about the authors. So tell us what you know. And otherwise, like I say, we're going to do Riders of the Purple Wage and lots of other videos on our channel coming up, including a current controversy
Ooh, yes.
coming
Indeed
up
we
in
are.
September.
That'll be fun.
Yes, that'll be an interesting video and possibly interesting comments with the things that are going on currently.
Yes, indeed.
And we didn't plan it that way. It just
It
kind of
just
happened.
kind of
We
happened.
planned this out way last January, I think.
Yeah, so it's just kind of the way things are, but we're gonna
Yeah.
follow through with it because news is news and good literature is good literature.
Mm-hmm.
And the drama in the literary world is sure something.
Yeah.
So we'll see about that.
So until then, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Come on back for all the videos.
We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.